Hello everybody, I'm Kamaleao, welcome to my channel, and today another Hearthstone video. I'm not going to play or show you a deck this time. Instead I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think that aggro has become so much stronger over the course of Hearthstone, or Hearthstone's history. So I've been playing Hearthstone for quite a while now, and obviously aggro has always been a part of the game. I mean, especially with Hunter and the Hunter's hero power that just screams aggro deck. So yeah, aggro has always been a part of the game. But the game used to be much slower early on. And I think there's a very simple reason for that. And I want to talk about it today. So, when I look at So right now it's standard cards. I'm going to go to the basics, the classic set, and the basic set. I think it's not really possible to show me the basic and the classic set, is it? No, not really. But the thing is, if you go to standard and then look at all the cards that have charge, you have a decent number. So the Argent Horse Rider from the Grand Tournament, Wolf Rider, which is from the basic set, Sontar's Boar, okay, right now nobody's using that. There was a small time when it was used sometimes. I mean, cards change, and Hunter used to have different options. This one, yeah, used in very specific decks. This one again, basic set, rarely used, but sometimes. I mean, there's the it's not really used in aggro decks. It's used in the or was used in the anything can happen deck. Armored Warhorse. This is actually one of the charge mechanics that I really like, because it's a charged card that doesn't work in aggro decks. Because in aggro decks you want to have tons of very cheap minions, and if you have tons of very cheap minions, then this is not a charge card. If you have expensive minions in your deck, then this becomes charge. So I really like the idea behind it. It obviously doesn't work, nobody's playing this, but I like the idea very much. Stormwind Knight, again, pretty much nobody's using it because it's a charge with low attack and high health, which is not really what you want in a charge. Good old Leroy from classic set, Argent Commander from the classic set, Reckless Rocketeer, again something almost nobody's using. Argent Commander as well is not really used in aggro. The main reason is it's just too expensive. It's actually a charge card that is more of a control card, because it's essentially deal 4 damage and then have a 4/2 on the board, which is nice. So there aren't too many charge minions in the neutrals that are used in aggressive decks that are not in the basic set, except for the Argent Horse Rider. When we go to the class sets, for example, you have the aggressive Warrior, which uses Alexstras's Champion, which is Grand Tournament card. Awesome Commander is not used. And the Corcoran, which is basic. Charge, nobody uses charge. This is more of an aggressive finisher, which is always used. Alakir, almost never used. That's not an aggressive card. Unleash the Hounds, okay, that changed several times over the course of its existence, I think. As far as I remember, or at least one huge change. King Crush, nobody uses King Crush. And those are rarely used as aggressive cards anyway, because there's no aggressive druid. If we do the same thing for all cards, there's not too much difference here. As you can see, most of them are identical. There are a few here that nobody ever used, like the Gnomrigan Infantry. Yeah, and that's it. So, what I'm trying to say here, is charge is not really the problem. It can be very annoying through stuff like Leroy Jenkins and so on, and Leroy was nerfed because of that. But all in all, there is almost the same amount of charge right now as it was with only the basic and classic set, because this is basic, classic, this is basic, this is basic, this one is new, this one is never played, this one is basic, this one is never played, this one is basic and never played, this one is classic, this one is classic, and yeah, arguably a charge, this one basic, never played. So, and for the classes, there are only a handful, like Electratus Champion. I think that's pretty much the only one. Yeah. So, charge, as annoying as it can be to get killed by Leroy, charge is not really the problem. Now, what does why do decks like, for example, the very aggressive Zulok work, or the aggressive Hunters? They work because they are extremely reliable and at the same time really strong in the early game. You almost never draw cards that you can't use early on, because you almost never have really expensive cards in your deck. And you have so many cheap cards in your deck. So many, I mean, oh, get rid of the charge. The Zulok can have up to 15 1-drops in his deck and have useful 1-drops. So I'll just go into it. It's a little bit easier. For example, let's go, say I'm going this one. So useful 1-drops in an aggressive deck. Flame Imp, or in the current standard. Possessed Villager, Mortal Coil, Power Overwhelming is useful, Soulfire, potentially Voidwalker, Argent Squire, Leper Gnome not so much, but it's not terrible, let's just throw it in there for kicks. What else do we have? Nothing here. This one is not bad. So, oh, and I disenchanted my, where is he? My Abusive Sergeant. So 2 more. So there's 20 1-drops which are arguably alright to play in an aggressive Zulok. Of course, some of those are spells like Power Overwhelming, Soulfire, Mortal Coil. But still, there's actually too many good 1-drops to play in an aggressive deck, so you throw some of those out. You might only use 1 Power Overwhelming, you might not use the Leopard Gnome, you might use 1 or none of those, and you're still at 15. Remember, +2 for the Abusive Sergeant. Useful 1-mana cards. And I can do the same with 2-mana cards. Like, let's throw them out. Can do the same with 2-mana cards. So, what do I have? Useful, aggressive-ish 2-mana cards. This one is pretty good because it gives you aggressive aggressive 1-drop cards like Soulfire, Power Overwhelming, stuff like that. This one gives you more stuff on the board. This one obviously. This one theoretically, though it's on the lower end of usefulness. This one deals 4 damage. This one can kill a minion while it goes out. Obviously. Lance Carrier, though nobody's using that, is not terrible actually. I'm not going to throw it in right now. So did I miss anything that I would have to craft? Wild Pyro, not really in that deck. So again, 14 cards that are arguably pretty good in an aggressive deck. So I already could fill a deck with aggressive cards and useful and good aggressive cards that are only 1 or 2 mana. Now let's try the same using only the basic and classic set. First with the 1-drops. So we have Mortal Coil, Soulfire, White Walker. That's all from the basic here. And here, well, nothing. Go to the classic set. There's a little bit more. You have Flame Imp, Power Overwhelming. Arguably Argent Squire, Worgen Infiltrator. And the Abusive Sergeant. So we are at 16 instead of 20. That's not too much of a difference. And go to 2-drops. Nothing. In the classic set. Here we have the Alpha, Juggler, and that's it. Yeah, that's it. And when you go to the basic set, there is nothing. Maybe, but not very good. And yeah, that's a worse version of the other one, and without the synergy it's not really good. But we're down to 6, which is far less. So I cannot fill my deck as efficiently with good, aggressive, strong early game. I mean, even if I take that in, which is not really good. I mean, it has the Knife Juggler potential, but it's missing the 3-drop you want to buff with lots of stuff. So it's less good, but not terrible. But yeah, what I'm saying is you have far more trouble filling your deck with good, strong, aggressive early game cards. And that means you have to fill your deck up to 30 cards with cards that are less good in aggressive decks. Like, I don't know, what can we do? We will not put in a Succubus, but yeah, maybe Ooze is not terrible. Crocolisk is really not good. So I have to go higher in mana cost. Yeah, maybe that. Those. So yeah, I have to go higher in mana cost. I have to put in cards that I wouldn't really want to put in order to get to 30 cards, because there are not enough strong, good, aggressive early game minions in the classic and basic set. So when classic and basic was everything that was around, it was more difficult to build a very stable, ultra aggressive, all-out face deck, because with many classes there just weren't enough cards to do anything like that. Now let's do the same thing, just delete that with Hunter. Hunter had a little bit of a better time as an aggressive deck back in the day. I forgot the 0 mana, but there's not much there anyway. So in the basic set you have arguably a Cane Shot, Timberwolf only if you run lots of beasts, which at the moment, or back then, yeah, was sometimes done with Stone Tusk Boar and the old Unleash the Hound and stuff like that, but not really. Classic, nothing for 1 mana. Maybe Argent Squire, but that's a more modern one. Worgen. Back in the day you could do funny stuff with Young Dragonhawk, but I'm going to leave that out. Leper Gnome is not really good, but just throw it in there. 2 There's nothing here, maybe explosive trap to deal damage. I'm only putting in stuff that kills the enemy right now. Arguably Bloodsail Raider, but Knife Juggler obviously. Oh, I forgot to go. Yeah. So 8 1-drops. Leper Gnome is not really that good anymore, nobody plays that. And Arcane Shot is not really an aggressive card, 2 damage for 1 mana, and not even the minion on the board. That's not very good. No, don't convert to wild. Convert to standard. Ah, shut up. Don't help me. So with the neutral cards, it's essentially the same again. You have the same stuff like Direwolf Alpha and so on. So I'm not going to go... No, not Deck Helper. Not going to go through that again. But here you can see it's not much in terms of aggressive. There are actually no 2-drop basics in the Hunter kit. So the big problem here is... or the big thing that made aggressive decks stronger and better over the time is not exactly that they got stronger minions. There's not really a power creep, I'd say, or not too much of a power creep. I mean, a little bit, like the large toad is definitely a power creep over, where is he? The Bloodfin Raptor. It's the same thing with deal 1 additional damage when it dies. Flame Juggler likes a 2-3 with an upside, and there is more or less a vanilla 2-3, isn't there? Oh no, the vanilla 2-3 is a beast. But still. These changes aren't huge. The biggest change, the main change, and by the way, the apartment beneath mine is getting renovated, so that's the the loud drilling noise you're hearing, probably. So yeah, the thing is, aggressive decks get far more options to choose from, and as a result of that, are able to completely fill a 30-slot deck with good, strong early game aggressive cards. And that didn't really used to be the case. You could fill your 30 card deck with maybe 20 good early game aggressive cards, and then you had to put in 10 cards. This is just a rough estimate just to give you the idea why it's not accurate, I'd say. But you had to put in some cards that weren't really great for aggressive decks. And this means that the result of that is that with more cards, more options to choose from, you can build better aggressive decks. Now, you might say, yes, but what's on the other side? I mean, defensive decks get better as well, right? Maybe, partly, not really. Let's go Warrior. Warrior is in theory a pretty defensive class. I mean, it has armor up as its main thingy. Get that away. So what would be defensive cards? Control cards, like Shield Slam. That is classic. So it has been there all the time. That's pretty much an aggressive card. Nobody uses it in defensive games. Blood to Ichor, the same thing. It's potentially both. You could use it in the defensive decks sometimes as a combo with Execute, but it also is an aggressive card because it gives you a 2/2 for 1 mana and it deals 1 damage to a minion. That's always nice. Or it kills an enemy minion so your aggressive minions survive longer. So it's more or less both. Armorsmith, that's a defensive card that has been around forever. Whirlwind, that can be... oh, yet it has been around forever. Bolster is crap. Cleave could be for killing tons of, like, the decks that just swarm the board. And it has been around forever. Cool Taskmaster has been around forever. Execute has been around forever, and it's not really good against aggressive decks. Fiery War Axe has been around forever. Slam, also works in aggressive decks to keep control of the board, and it has been around forever. Sparring partner is crap. Bash is usable in both, so it's both aggressive and defensive. Fierce Monkey, that's a new one. That's a useful new card, put that in. So one that is predominantly defensive. King's Defender is not very good. So you could, but nobody uses that. Ravaging Ghoul, that's a good defensive, but it also is a good offensive card, because you get rid of your opponent's board, and that's very, very important to keep your attacks going. But you can put it in both, yes. Protect the King is complete crap. Sheet Block, that's good, that has been around forever. Arathi Weaponsmith, not very useful and has been around forever. Bloodhood Brave, yeah, that one is new. And now we're getting into the area where the cards are just too expensive to be really, really good. I mean, Brawl, arguably, but it's also been around forever. And, yeah, Obsidian Destroyer. No, that's just too expensive. Now, early game, Goldshire Footman, nobody plays stuff like that. Puny Heal is completely pointless. Maybe Ooze to destroy aggressive weapons, but that has been around forever. And yeah, Doomsayer, that has been around forever. And I could go on. And I could do this for more classes and it would always be the same. Or, yeah, I think pretty much always. We did get additional defensive cards. But we got a smaller number of them, and they tend to be more expensive. Like, what is a good defensive card? Oh, I can't type. Twin Emperor. That is a very good defensive card. That takes a lot of prerequisites. You have to be playing a Cthulhu deck. You have to have enough Cthulhu buff cards in it to have it buffed up to 10 before turn 7 or before you play at Veclor. And it's a 7-drop. Many games against very aggressive decks are already over at turn 7, so all the defensive options from 7+, like Bog Creeper, which is a reasonable defensive card, Hogger, the new Hogger, Curator, Emperor, and that is pretty much it from the defensive cards that are more expensive. They are rarely played and they are rarely useful. I mean, the Curator arguably is played from time to time. I see it sometimes, not that often. But Bog Creeper, almost never. Augur, never. And it's not very good anyway. Obsidian Destroyer, never. Even when you go down to 6, there's not that much of defensive cards there. You could argue that Frost Elemental is potentially a defensive card because it buys you time, but nobody plays it anyway. Self-heal cards that exist are way too expensive and do way too little. Master Jouster has the problem that, of course, if the battle cry works, it's very good. If it doesn't, it's not very good. And it's just to make it work consistently against, well, any deck, but especially against the decks. You also want your deck to be useful against the more mid-rangey decks that are around. You would have to have a very high minion curve, and then you will just die before you can really play it. So that's pointless. Reno is, in my mind, the one big exception, but it is one card that can heal you. If you don't draw it early enough, you're dead anyway. And it does weaken your remaining deck significantly. So there are not many Reno decks around at the moment. Sunwalker, again, is just way too expensive for what it does. And way too slow. So going through stuff like that, through the defensive options, we did get more defensive options through time with the added expansions, but we got far less of them, and especially with stuff like Naxxramas being out, whereas Naxxramas, it doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't matter. I mean, with Sludge Belcher going out and Ancient Healbot going out, we lost quite seriously lost defensive options, because there weren't that many to begin with. Aggressive decks also lost stuff, sure, but they had far more options, and they still have far more options, and as such can fill their deck far more efficiently with good aggressive cards. On the other hand, it's far more difficult to fill your deck with good defensive cards, and that are cards that are good enough and defensive enough to survive the onslaught of tons of small aggressive minions. And most of the defensive cards are a little bit more on the expensive side anyway, which is very problematic, because often enough you're dead before you draw them, or you're dead before you have enough mana to play them. So that is not a good situation. And another thing is, even though the power creep is, I'd say, slight, I've seen many other card games where the power creep has been far more significant, but a power creep does exist. And, for example, where was it? Yeah, like the Huge Toad is definitely a power creep. There's a 3/2 beast for 2. Now there's a 3/2 beast for 2 that deals 1 additional damage. So it is there, it isn't huge, but it is there. At the same time, the defensive options didn't grow as quickly, and the main defense you have, which is your health, didn't grow at all. And in the way I see it, this is really helped the aggressive decks. We edge out the more defensive decks throughout the lifespan of Hearthstone so far. Because even though they always existed, back in the day, aggro was one deck style of many, and it wasn't really the main deck that was played. Like mid-range was far more prevalent, and late game decks and combo decks were very much prevalent. And by now, aggro is pretty much the way to go. If you want to win a lot and relatively safely, then go aggro. And the thing is, you would think if the meta becomes more and more aggressive, the way to counter the meta would be to play an extremely defensive deck that is very efficient at taking out minions, and very has lots of heals and just lets the aggressive decks run out of steam. And that used to be the case for a while. At least I'd say that used to be the case. This could probably be argued, but as far as I remember it and as far as I played the game, as soon as too many people were playing hugely aggressive decks, I would just go Sludge Belcher, 2 Sludge Belchers, 2 Ancient Healbots, lots of defensive cards, lots of survivability, and just let them run out of steam. That is not the way to play against aggro anymore, because you don't have the staying power in pretty much any class, or most classes, to consistently do that. Sure, with Warrior especially, it does work from time to time, but you have to hope that you get the right cards at the right time. And if you don't, you die. And it's come to the point where actually the most useful way to counter aggro is be more aggro, have more early game, have more aggression in your deck, so that you can outpace your opponent on the board, like stuff like Flame Juggler, and be lucky to kill his 1-drop. So, yeah. Personally, I don't really like that, the path that the game has taken. I wouldn't like the game to take the other path, the other way, where aggro is completely useless and everybody just armors up and tanks up and heals up and whatever till turn 10, and then we have a battle of 20 10 drops. That would be very boring as well. But I'd love the game to go back to a little bit more balance of power between the different deck types, so that aggro should still be viable. So aggro should still be an option, especially if everybody starts to play very slow decks. You should be able to crush them with aggro. But right now I feel that aggro is too much. It's too strong, it has too many options, it's too easy to build an aggro deck that is just extremely efficient, extremely reliable, and just crushes pretty much any other deck. So yeah, that's my view. Let me know what you think. Do you feel that it's the same problem, or do you see some other problem that makes aggro shine so much and outshine all the other deck types? Or don't you think that it's a problem and you'll actually like the games are over at turn 5 to 7 games? Let me know what you think. I'm Kamliao. Have a good day.